As the Manipur crisis enters its fourth month, the assembly was convened for the first time since the violence erupted in early May, but it lasted for only 11 minutes. I'm Barkha Dutt, here with the Mojo story. Our relentless focus on the situation in Manipur continues amid protests by Kuki groups and the Kuki legislators in Manipur. The Biren Singh government convened a session of the Manipur Assembly today, but it lasted for only 11 minutes. Now, the Kuki legislators, all 10 of them, said it was not safe for them to come to Imphal. The assembly was convened anyway. The opposition sprang to its feet and started protesting. The opposition Congress party wanted a longer, at least 5-day assembly session. The Biren Singh government moved an obituary reference, and after that, because of interruptions, nothing much really got discussed about the situation in the state. In fact, the assembly was convened almost as it turned out for a mere formality and was then adjourned indefinitely in a matter of a few minutes. In the meantime, the crisis continues. The violence is mercifully down, but there is still no free movement between Imphal and Churachandpur, between the valley areas and the hill areas. If you're a Meitei today, you cannot go into the Kuki-dominated areas, and the vice versa is also true. Till this date, the bodies of those who lived in Imphal and were killed in that mob violence that broke out in early May are lying in the morgues of Imphal's hospitals. This after a mass burial plan by Kuki groups was called off after an appeal, as well as appeal from the Home Ministry in Delhi and an order of the High Court. Amidst all of this, there are very, very few voices that are talking about reconciliation, that are talking about finding a middle path, that are talking about finding a solution. We have been trying to enable a dialogue among and between these voices, and we're very pleased today to welcome two people to the program. One, a member of the Meitei community, another, a member of the Kuki community, both of whom shared a platform just recently making an impassioned plea for peace and appealing to both sides to somehow try and come to the middle and find a way forward. I want to welcome to the program Dr. Jilangamba Yengkhom. He is, of course, a historian and a professor at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences at Guwahati. And also joining us is a Dr. Thangzakhup, who's an assistant professor at the National Law University. Welcome both of you to the program. Let me start with you, Dr. Tombing. Do both of you know each other from before? Are you friends from before? What made you decide to share the stage as you did an appeal for peace? Dr. Tombing.
I met Dr. Yengkhom for the first time when we were invited for East Mojo Peace Talk, the program hosted by them. At that time, I met him, and this is how we got introduced to each other. And I met him again when the Assam Nagrik Samaj organized this appeal for peace in Manipur, and that's how we met. But then I have been born and brought up in the valley area, so I do have lots of commonality with regard to certain shared struggles during the peak of insurgencies and other aspects of cultural life, and also the type of friendship that I have when I was growing up in the valley of Imphal.
But you
Thank
know,
you.
one rarely hears these voices today, Dr. Yengkhom. When I was on the ground in Manipur, I would always ask both sides, don't you have friends from the other community? And both sides would say, yes, of course we do. And in fact, I'll tell you one night when I was in this village, in fact, of Fayang, just outside Imphal, and I asked the Meitei people I met there, I said, don't you have friends from the Kuki community? And one of these young men holding a gun, patrolling through the night, said, my best friend is a Kuki. And then I said, then what happened? He said, now this is war. Now, I ask you, Dr. Yengkhom, how do we get past this divide? The both of you have shown an example. You're from the Meitei community. Where do you think the process of healing can begin, Dr. Yengkhom?
Thank you, Barkha. There has to be, I think, different kinds of initiatives. So what Dr. Tombing and I, when we met for the first time for the East Mojo event, we realized that there are many voices in border communities who still want peace. There is not just people who want war, who want violence to continue. So I think that's a positive step to recognize that there are voices in the other community who might, who also wish to, find a solution, who also wish peace, who also, want to talk about reconciliation. And we can go into details about how do we achieve certain
Yeah.
kinds of policy so that we can begin to have a more more peaceful sort of dialogue, at least a condition for dialogue to begin. But before I say further, it's also in a way indicative of the tragedy that we are living through. That that our chance encounter in a program sort of became point of story, a news
Mhm.
story. So
Yes.
it's in another in an earlier time it would have been just like any other meeting that we would have had, because both of
Yes.
us are located in Guwahati, because both of us are from the academia. We would have made for some conference or some meeting or the other, and it wouldn't have made a difference. But today, it's in that sense, it's actually a very telling moment, I think, telling of the times that we are living through. That two people meeting, two people who happen to be from Manipur meeting in Guwahati has become sort of a news story, right? Uh,
Absolutely. This should
so
not have been in happier times, in better times. This should have been an unremarkable event. This should not have been worthy of any attention from the news. You're absolutely right. But it is telling of the times because, there have obviously been interpersonal relationships between the communities, but at the moment, at least geographically, that relationship is broken. Dr. Tombing, spending time in Kuki dominated areas, the only way we could get, let's say, from Imphal to other hill areas was by ensuring that our driver was a Muslim. That is the only way that we could physically travel from point A to point B of Manipur. So, Dr. Tombing, let's start with concrete questions. Is there a framework within which both of you or the state or the country can talk about moving forward? For example, your people, your community is asking for a separate administration. The Meiteis are saying no question, it's out of the question. Is there a middle ground that can be found in that demand? I'll start with you, Dr. Tombing.
Yes, in fact, to answer that query, I would love to lay out the template of what Manipur is. The template of Manipur can be studied from three contexts. One could be the template before pre-British template, where in fact the tribal communities and then the uh, valley communities coexisted in the idea of the tribals being in scattered chieftainship, and then the Meitei community being in a consolidated certain kind of a kingdom. Now, during the time of the British, the template changes to a certain kind of an integration of the tribes and then the valley in some kind of an arrangement for maybe administrative convenience. And the third template that comes up is after the formation of Union of India, and also with the coming into force of the Constitution of India, the fraternity of Manipur state and that with Assam and then the larger context of India is established. And by 1972, with the reorganization of Northeastern Northeastern region, and then the formation of the state, the idea of the fraternity among the Meitei, Kukizo, and then the Naga has gone deeper than the fraternity, and it is now a lived experience of shared struggles with regard to insurgency movements and also other struggles. And therefore, it has gone deeper into the idea of maybe a brotherhood. Now, what most of the communities do not understand is that there is lots of shared history, shared struggle, and after the mayhem, so the mob is frenzy, let's say, and then that mayhem has led to lots of hatred and violence, and which has led to destruction of place of worship and also of properties, houses, defilement of women, and also killing and murder of certain volunteers or maybe civilians. Now, if we could be able to establish an idea of larger fraternity and also of a deep connect of maybe because of continued struggle and shared struggles, there is a concept of development of a brotherhood. And the moment such death happens or such destruction happens, it is fratricidal in nature. And if we could imagine and accept that it is fratricidal, the losses, the defilement, and then the losses of life actually is our own, and there are
Yes.
victims from both the sides, and this
You
idea
know,
has to be large, I think. Yes.
you're very right. But what I find and found in talking to people for all these months, Dr. Yengkhom, is that grief, instead of offering mirror image, it should offer a mirror image. People are suffering in both communities. People are getting killed in both communities. Livelihood is being lost in both communities. What ends up happening is that there is a kind of mistrust of the other person's grief. Either that happens, they're lying, the rape didn't really happen, the killing didn't really happen, or there is a competitiveness. They've suffered, we've suffered more. In that narrative, in that discourse, where people somehow lose their empathy, there's an othering of the community takes place. How do we build this sort of narrative that Dr. Tombing is talking about, a collective shared narrative, as it were, of loss? Dr. Yengkhom?
Yes, well, what I briefly mentioned earlier, there have to be certain kinds of mechanisms put in place. It's not going to emerge out of nowhere. Of course, there are personal friendships, but it is going to need more than just personal friendships. It is going to need more than the earlier kind of relationships that existed at an individual level. So there have to be institutional mechanisms, I think, which will have to be put in place so that dialogue can start, so that people can feel that the other is also a human being, that the other is not inferior to me, that the process of dehumanization that we have gone through, somehow we have to rehumanize the other. So for that to arrive at, I think people have to feel a sense of security. People have to feel that they can go back to a past that they believe was more peaceful. And once that arrives, and then I think we can talk about
But,
reconciliation
but but
process.
what is that? What is that mechanism? It obviously has to be led by government, or should it be led by civil society, Dr. Yengkhom?
It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, I suppose. So if you allow me to share my thoughts, we can think of this as sort of one is a short-term measure that we need, and the other, or rather, an urgent matter that we need to think about, which is the question of bringing down the violence, which is the question of those who are staying in the relief camps and so on and so forth. So it's about law and order and questions of relief and rehabilitation. That's, I think, what we need at the moment immediately. So there has to be some kind of an intervention, and especially from the government, in order to bring about a certain kind of change in the living conditions, horrific living conditions of the people who are in the relief camps. Firing is still going on, so that has to stop. So I think that's something which we need urgent attention. And the
But
other,
where do we sorry, complete your point. Complete your point.
yeah,
Complete your
so
point.
the other is more of a long-lasting piece that we must imagine, wherein questions of these dialogue, questions of reconciliation and those kinds of issues can come in, right? And I think it's important for us also to segregate the two measures that we need to.
Okay, I have two specific questions for both of you. To Dr. Tombing, my question is, one of the demands that comes from the Meitei community again and again is NRC. Where do you see this demand for the NRC? There is a lot of talk about infiltration. The official figures tell you that the infiltration for Myanmar is a little over 2,000. The Meiteis don't believe that's the full figure. The bulk of the infiltration has actually gone into Mizoram. Then they say, let's do the NRC. Where do you come in on this, Dr. Tombing?
The NRC concern and then the biometric concern, that goes hand in hand. Let's say, let's just assume that goes hand in hand. And now the statistics are out that in Mizoram 40,000 plus are there, and then the concern of illegal immigrants is around, they say at one time 4,000, but then the identified comes down to 2,000 plus something. Now, if that is the statistics, then the larger concern is that when we have a illegal migration issue, let's say, which may be connoted with an idea of concerns of refugees because of the junta issues in Myanmar, let's say. The larger concern is that these people need humanitarian aid. This is one part of it. And to premise that these illegal immigrants can be the pathology of illegal immigrant can be so deep that it can create a certain kind of a law and order issue. This is, I think, rather too far-fetched, right? And then if the causes of the certain narco-related matters, if they are to be blamed also, or maybe the ethnic clashes that has happened to be blamed on certain idea of illegal immigrants, but then even if, let's say, 10% of the illegal immigrants are sneaky parasitic predators, let's say also, how could a community so advanced, so well evolved, play into the hands of a meager 200 illegal immigrants who have traits of parasitic predators? So,
right.
Yeah, that's where the real concern also comes out.
And let me then take that to Dr. Yengkhom as a final question. Institutional mechanisms, yes, but if you have civilians armed, as both communities are, you have paddy farmers carrying guns, children carrying guns, you have police armories being looted, and you have, the Meitei, so many people who come out on the streets saying, oh, the Kukis are narco-terrorists, they're not Indian, they come in from outside. How do we find a language that we can agree on? I think that's why what both of you did was newsworthy, because that language appears to have disappeared in the last 4 months.
Well, Barkha, you see, I think there are larger concerns, right? So we don't have to speak in the language of dehumanization, but if there are concerns, let's say if there is concern of illegal immigration, let's say, then it is the responsibility of the government particularly, but also responsibility of civil society organizations, the media and intellectuals in general, to try and find out what is the truth, right? So we need to be also establishing first that there is a concern, and let's say if that concern is genuine, then we have to try and find mechanisms to deal with that question. Until we do that, we will then allow different kinds of groups to create this vicious atmosphere in which the language would be one of dehumanization. So we don't even know, for instance, just to give an example, right? We don't even know how many. We know that the Burmese nationals have entered into India, especially Manipur and Mizoram. The figures are, we have absolutely no idea of knowing how many people have entered Manipur, right? So in a sense, then the administrative apparatus, the state apparatus, had failed to identify these people who had come in. So at some point, the responsibility has to be that of the state apparatus. Whoever was in charge failed to identify these people who came into the state. So we have to at least find out, for a start, objectively, how many have actually entered. And once that is established, then I think we can, if there are exaggerations, those would automatically have to be tackled with.
Yeah.
If there are others who are trying to play politics around it, we have to then talk about those issues. So the first thing is we don't even know the numbers, and that's where I think the problem arises.
Right. Let me just, sorry, I'm out of time, so I want to just give a short, sort of very brief concluding comment to both of you. I'll start with you, Dr. Yengkhom. One sort of prescriptive idea. You've said institutional mechanism. It can be government, it can be civil society. Let's look at the smallest unit briefly. Where would you start? Would it be disarming? Would it be disarming civilians of guns?
First of all, people have to be given a sense of security. Okay? How that is done is, of course, there could be different mechanisms. There could be experts who can come in, security experts who can come in and tell us what needs to be done. But people feel insecure. That's why, and I think as long as civilians have arms in their hands, none of the things that we talk about, dialogue, about rehabilitation, none of those issues can actually begin. So the first initial step has to be a sense of security to the people, that they don't feel the need to defend themselves, right? So I think that would be the first needed step.
Dr. Chombing, would you like to add to what your first step would be? Would it also be the same?
I would love that at a CSO level and at every sphere of society, we should be able to internalize empathy and also see the existential concern that both the community face. For the Meitei in the Kuki-dominated area, the existential concern is there. For the Kuki-Zo community, the existential concern is even larger because access to education, access to health facilities, access to job opportunities are now at stake. So therefore, if we could address this concern of existential issue first, and thereby start a process of confidence building measure, which should be loud and clear from the initiative of the state and also of the union in certain kind of statesmanship. If we can ensure that, maybe that might be an idea of peace, so that there are no more killing, there are no more burning of properties and destruction of trade, commerce, etc.
Well, I just want to say thank you to both of you, because while Dr. Yengkhom says that two people talking from the same state at a conference would normally not have even attracted a second look, today it is actually a headline. But there's such few people talking in the measured, calm, thoughtful way that both of you have. So really, it is not just newsworthy, but also deserves many compliments. So thank you, Dr. Chombing and Dr. Yengkhom. I hope that this can be a beginning of more and more voices joining this process of being able to openly and honestly talk, but without personalized attacks and the dehumanization and the othering of any community or any human being. Thank you very much. Take care, and thank you for talking to us. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.